Last October, the National Cancer Institute released a study that showed women who frequently use chemical hair relaxers straightening products may have a higher risk of developing uterine cancer than women who do not use them. In the study, women who used the products at least 4 times a year were more than twice as likely to develop uterine cancer than those who didn't. The study was conducted by the National Institute of Health's National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. Within a week, multiple suits were filed against L'Oreal and other brands and companies including Soft Sheen Carson, Dabur International, Namaste Laboratories, Strength of Nature, and others that manufacture and market chemical relaxers. Court documents released this month report that there are currently multiple lawsuits pending in courts across the country. These companies knew or should have known that the use of the dangerous chemicals in the products would increase the risk of cancer, yet they marketed and sold them anyway. Chemical hair straighteners typically contain products associated with higher cancer risks, including formaldehyde, metals, phthalates, and parabens, which may be more easily absorbed by the body through scalp burns and abrasions often caused by chemical straighteners. That shocking finding is particularly alarming for Black women who report using hair straightening products more than any other populations. In fact, uterine cancer rates and deaths are on the rise in the U.S. In 2022, the global black hair care market was estimated at $2.5 billion, with the hair relaxer market alone estimated at $718 million in 2021. It is estimated that as many as 90% of Black women and women of color in the United States have used relaxer products. Black women have long been the victims of dangerous products specifically marketed to them. Black hair has been and always will be beautiful, but Black women have been told they have to use these products to meet society's standards. In Africa, hair was seen as a source of personal and spiritual power. One of the first things American slave masters did to enslave people was to cut their hair. This was a way to break their spirit and make slaves easier to control. Going back to the time of chattel slavery, white Americans came to see African or Black hair as something to be hidden, animalistic, or ugly, with the idea that good hair is equated with a straightener hair texture, and that straightener hair connotated a superior character. The fact that these companies targeted Black and Latin women for their own profit motive and without regard to the serious health risks that these hair straightening products cause is a serious wrong that needs to be corrected. The Insider exclusive Justice in America news team is on location in Baltimore, Maryland, to take you behind the scenes in this new national TV special, Justice in America for Women of Color, with Evelyn Darden and Mark Darden III, partners at the Law Offices of Addison-Darden, to show how urgently it's needed to shine a light on and reverse the devastating health outcomes suffered by Black women and women of color who have been targeted for too long by manufacturers of unsafe products. This case is just one part of a much larger issue of bias with dire environmental and health consequences for Black women. Evelyn and Mark have earned reputations as unyielding trial lawyers who repeatedly represent clients against big companies in the Goliaths of the world and repeatedly win. They have built substantial reputations nationwide by consistently winning cases other law firms have turned down. And their amazing courtroom skills and headline-grabbing success rate continue to provide their clients with the results they need and the results they deserve. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Baltimore, Maryland. It is my great pleasure to introduce Mark and Evelyn Darden. Welcome to the show.
Thank you,
pleasure.
Steve.
Tell our audience a little bit about your firm. What type of law do you guys practice?
Well, Evelyn Darden, as senior partner and founder of the Law Offices of Addison-Darden, I'm pleased to say that over the 3 decades in which we've practiced law as a mother and son law firm, we have done a variety of cases, both civil and criminal. But in recent years, we have focused and narrowed our practice primarily to mass torts, personal injury, things that have caused injuries to individuals and collectively to large groups. So currently we have a focus on the hair products or the chemical hair relaxers that studies have shown have caused various cancers, as well as the Camp Lejeune, where a number of persons have been injured because of exposure to the toxic water, as well as other single event personal injury cases.
And Mark, you grew up in this family, and you've been a lawyer quite some time, and you're very much involved with this stuff too, right?
Very much involved on not just a daily basis, but in the beginning, coming out of law school, it was sort of some prep work, prep for cases. In fact, I tell this story that the first day after I passed the bar, I was preparing a case that I thought she was going to try, only to walk into court with her, and she says, "Your Honor, I'll be deferring to counsel to handle the matter."
You didn't know you were up on deck?
I did not know. Day one, jury trial, criminal case. It was daunting, but I knew I was prepared. I was prepared by one of the best trial attorneys I've known. I think anybody that's worked with her when she was in the state's attorney's office in Baltimore City knows that, as well as anyone who worked with her when she was in federal office working for EEOC. But as Evelyn said, we see ourselves now, after having so many years of experience in different areas of the law, really trying to bring our forces together to help champion the cause of the everyday man or woman who has been harmed by, we don't want to necessarily identify, but a big business, in the case of Camp Lejeune, the government, where responsibility was shirked for so many years, even after knowing that these toxic chemicals were causing cancers. The same thing with these corporations, with the hair products. And then we've always done personal injury, and we just wanted to focus in on the trucking aspect of it, but we continue to keep our doors open for any type of tort-related personal injury type matters.
It's kind of amazing in all of these cases, there is the offender. We're talking about Camp Lejeune, the government. There are people that made decisions when they were aware that the Marines and the Navy personnel were being harmed by these chemicals, but chose to shut up, chose not to reveal the truth. Why? Because it might reflect badly on them. They made these decisions. And it's fortunate that we have trial lawyers like you guys that go out there and dig, and find the evidence and push this so there is accountability, okay? In this particular hair relaxer chemical straightener products, who are some of the companies that have been named in these lawsuits?
Some of the companies, Dark and Lovely, L'Oreal products, TBC, Revlon, a number of the major manufacturers who have been manufacturing and producing these products for well over 4 decades or more. We, at this particular point, are still investigating discovery to determine those manufacturers whose products were perhaps used more frequently than others. But collectively, manufacturers and producers of chemical hair relaxers all basically fall in the same category, to the extent that in their manufacturing and production of these products, they knew the chemicals that were being used. And they had scientists and persons in their companies who knew the long-term effects. So that's the disheartening and sad part about this, is that the manufacturers knew or should have known that consequences of this sort would result.
You know, in doing research on these cases, I and my team went back and looked at, okay, why are women of color straightening their hair, right? And that's an interesting concept because really the marketing companies exploited that, took advantage of that. And the interesting thing is that we discovered is that way back when the first slaves were coming from Africa, in Africa, the hair was considered a sign of beauty and strength. The slave owners knew this. And so what they did is they shaved everybody's head so they wouldn't get an idea that they had, you know, some sort of power. And it stayed that way forever. And then, of course, living in a diverse demographics as America has a history of white and black and that sort of thing, the society determined, you know, the white people determined that straight hair was beautiful hair, right? That was considered the best hair. And these companies like L'Oreal took advantage of that and started marketing these hair straighteners. And I saw, and I just wanted to make sure I said the right thing, that some of the chemicals they put in here are formaldehyde, metals, phthalates, parabens, chemicals that can be easily absorbed to the skin, on the scalp, if you have a cut. And these cause, as you mentioned, uterine cancer. And there are people dying today and have died already because they were only using it maybe 1 or 2 or 3 times a month, maybe even less than that, right? They were injecting their bodies of this. What is the status of these cases? What's happening with, there have been some lawsuits that have been filed that have been resolved, right?
Not resolved, but there's litigation. But before we go into that, Steve, let me just go back a little bit about the beauty aspect and why it is that women of color, black and brown women, would even consider using chemical products to straighten their hair. As you said, in Africa, when the persons were brought over and enslaved, they did have hair, super curly, natural, kinky hair. But that was considered their crown and glory. And as a young child, my mother would use that term frequently. That's your crown and glory, and make sure it's looking good. And over time, then what happened is the sign of beauty in America was straight hair, was considered that beauty. Well, Madam C.J. Walker, who brought in the concept of the hot comb, pressing the hair to straighten it out, she did that. And for decades, African American women, myself, and others did that, and we were able to style our hair in various ways. But then the chemical hair relaxer people, the manufacturers, came in and said, as opposed to that, let's try this, because now the hair will stay straightened longer. Whereas with the pressing comb or the straightening comb, as many of us would refer to it, is if it rained, your hair went right back to its natural form. If you got in the shower, if it was humid or whatever, it went back. So you could have a hairdo one day that was gone 2 or 3 days later. So the chemical manufacturers say, okay, let's keep this hair straight for a significant period of time. So that's how the chemical relaxing part came into being. And we look back on it now and says, you know what? We didn't know the high cost of beauty. And that's what happened. It was a high cost we paid because in years subsequent, we're now realizing that those chemicals that you just identified were able to seep into the scalp. And because of the burns that would be caused, it would then create openings in the skin. There would be scabs that would result. The scabs would move away. The chemicals move into the body. So that's how the origin of this causing the cancers is that these chemicals were able to seep into the body through the scalp as the chemicals have been applied.
Yeah, and as these companies manufactured these products, they knew these chemicals were dangerous.
Exactly.
You know, and they continued doing it.
Absolutely.
And it's just totally, I mean, I, as you know, am a writer, and I write a series called Karma Justice, and I get sick and tired of having corporate executives hiding behind the corporate veil. Okay, we manufacture this product. How much money do you want? We'll pay that after you go to litigation for years and years and years. They should go to jail, you know? I mean, they knew. They're killing people.
Just like with the tobacco companies, they continued to manufacture knowing, that the nicotine would eventually cause lung cancer and other things, and they didn't put warnings. So as a result of that litigation, then there was a lot of change. And what we're hoping to do is not only get compensation for persons who were injured, but help to change the whole process of making people aware so that they can have a choice as to whether or not to use this.
Are any of these products being sold in the market right now?
Oh, yes, they are. And let me tell you, as I told you, 2 weeks ago, I was in Dubai. I was at a souk, and there, where my goddaughter lived, one right below her, and I look on the shelf, and what do I see? Dark and Lovely hair relaxers and olive oil hair relaxers that are being sold in Dubai.
Why hasn't the FTC or anybody stepped in and prevented these products from being resold?
That's a good question. And we all know that whether it's the tobacco companies, whether it's these hair relaxer companies, they all have research departments. They all have to do reports. Mm-hmm. And that's just it. It's no notice. It's no information being forthrightly given. Mm-hmm. Even if those are being requested, we know that many times they're being suppressed. And so it's the warnings, as Evelyn talked about, and it's getting that information to the public so that the users of the products can make an informed decision. Do I want to put this in my body? Do I want to put this on my hair? I now understand and know what the consequences may be. But that just wasn't the case, as Evelyn and you have pointed out.
From a chemist's point of view, are there other products out there in the market right now that don't have these chemicals that perform or straighten the hair as well as the ones that are really kind of deadly?
As a result of a number of scientific studies that have been going on, and in particular the major one through NIH, the National Institute of Health, that released a very substantial and significant report back in October of 2022, which was only about 5, 6, 7 months ago. The hair companies recognized that the consequences were there, and so therefore they, not all of them, but some of them, and I can't give specifics on those, but some of them have started to make changes. As a matter of fact, they will now put on the box.
They're not required to do that, though, the warning?
Not at this time.
Okay, so let's stop here. This report came out in October. That is 6 months ago. People are being exposed, women are being exposed right now, and as a result of that, some may die sometime in the future, right? Why isn't something done immediately?
That's a good question, and that's up to the manufacturers, not only immediately, but why wasn't something done 10, 15 years ago? Because what has happened is that because these products were used and women were thinking, well, this is a good way to have my daughter's hair looking straight and pretty throughout the summer or whatever, young girls as young as 10 to 12 years old were using this either through a beauty salon, or their moms or someone in the family would do this. And as they continued, because the perms usually were repeated every 4 to 8 weeks. So the criteria that we use is for persons who have used it on a regular basis at least 4 times a year over a period of 5 years consistently, and if they'd been diagnosed with uterine cancer or ovarian cancer, then we're looking at those cases very seriously, because we see the connection, as the NIH report and study has shown, that in all likelihood, and again, we'll get into that later, but that is the main criteria we use for accepting and screening and evaluating cases.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was going to be a question of mine. How do you, this is the reason we're doing this show. There are people that have been using it for a period of 5 years, over the period of time you were talking about, maybe who haven't been diagnosed with any cancers yet, correct?
That's correct.
Should they be calling you just in case.
Yes, at least discuss the circumstances with us, or if they have matters that appear to be early symptoms of one of these particular cancers.
And what would be early symptoms?
Well, it varies from person to person, but bleeding, miscarriages, infertility, those are just a few. So they may not necessarily have the cancer at that time, but if they have gone through various gynecological symptoms and injuries or mishaps, I won't call them mishaps, but if they have gone through various things, like if a young woman realizes that, you know, she's healthy in all respects, but she continues to have miscarriages, or she's infertile, things of this nature, excessive bleeding, early onset menopause, things of this nature, could possibly mean that it's somewhere down the line. So all of these are factors that are taken into account that we like to discuss with our clients, but primarily we're looking to see if a person has in fact been diagnosed with one of them, uterine cancer, ovarian cancer, and in particular, if there has been a hysterectomy related to it in terms of having the entire uterus removed or other parts of the reproductive system.
Okay. And you have a toll-free number that people can call, right?
What we strongly advise people to do is to go to our website, addison-darden-law.com. That way they can get an early determination, and then we will follow up with them through telephone call, of course, but email. And actually, I had someone to call me just yesterday, and she said, well, I really just want information. And I said, great. Best thing to do is to go to my website first, and then we will connect within 24 hours, and we can discuss this further. So one of the things that, and Mark will tell you, is with our firm, over the 3+ decades we have been practicing, what becomes extremely important for us is we want our clients to be informed, to be educated, so that they can then make choices as to whether to come with us, whether they have a case. And so we, more or less as a public service announcement, let persons know if you've been harmed in a particular way, and whatever the criteria, whatever the circumstances, we're here to assist you. And we do believe in listening to persons and providing answers.
All right, very good. Well, I'm glad we're doing this show because amazingly, even though the National Institute of Health put out this report 6 months ago, right? Not too many people have that on their best reading list every day.
Right.
True.
It's not really promoted that much. You might read about it here and there in the newspapers, but then it's a dead issue because we go on to other things, right? So I'm glad we're doing this show, and I'm glad you guys are on top of this, because we highly recommend that our audience contact you after they look at your website to see if they need you to help them get the justice they need, right?
Right. And Steve, earlier you had asked me a question about whether or not any cases have been filed in the state of the litigation. Yes, and for those cases that have been preliminarily filed, they have been brought together in the Northern District of Illinois, where Judge Mary Rowland is the judge. It has been identified as a MDL, a multi-district litigation. And I must say, Mark and I were very pleased when I got an invitation just a few days ago to become a part of that MDL. Through what's called the Leadership Development Committee. It's a very highly selected group of attorneys who basically represent the interests of all of those who are filing cases of a similar nature. And this small group of attorneys actually are the ones who have contact with the judge in terms of presenting evidence. We're the ones who make decisions in terms of what experts, what additional scientific studies, and things of that nature. So that is, we feel very good to be a part of that team based upon our experience and our training, because we've been doing large cases of this nature for quite a while.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I want to thank you both for being on the show. Thank you.
My
Thank you,
pleasure.
Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.